Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Patty Persuasive, the Assistant Director of ADAPT, a division for advancing prevention and treatment in the Center for Drug Policy and Prevention at the University of Baltimore. For those of you new to ADAPT, we are a training and technical assistance division that supports the development and advancement of substance use prevention in high-tech communities across the nation. I'm very lucky to be joined today by our presenter, Dr. William Crano, who you will hear more about momentarily, as well as our ADAPT Director, Dr. Laura Papard, who will be co-moderating today's event and managing our Q&A discussion. For many of our viewers today, you have participated in previous webinars that are part of ADAPT's Fundamentals of Substance Use Prevention technical webinar series. If you are new to our series, welcome. The series is something we're offering in partnership with the National Prevention Science Coalition as one way to break down some of the fundamental concepts in substance use prevention. Our approach to these webinars has really been to ensure that the information that we are providing to you is relatable in content and language and shared in a way that makes it easily digestible. And that's because we believe that these are essential ingredients that will help promote the greater uptake of any new knowledge, but also help propel you into action where you can directly apply what you've learned here. If you would like to access any of our previous webinars, they are available on the ADAPT YouTube channel, and the information on how to access that channel is provided to you in a resource supplement. So last month, we held a webinar on using persuasive messaging in support of substance use prevention. That was offered by an expert in the field of persuasive prevention, Dr. William Crano. One thing we quickly realized following that webinar was that the viewers were really craving the opportunity to learn more about how to construct persuasive prevention messaging. So today is our response to that request. Dr. Crano generously agreed to return for a part 2 in this persuasive messaging mini-series. And what we'll really be focusing on today is providing you with many examples and opportunities to learn more about what works well in prevention messaging in hopes that this will set you up for greater success in your messaging efforts. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items before I hand it over to Dr. Crano. We are really hoping that you will engage in discussion with us today. You can do that by typing your questions into the Ask a Question box that's located beneath the presenter's image. Sending your questions at any time. We'll collect them and address them during our Q&A sessions. Second, you can access the resource supplement by navigating to the Event Resources heading that's directly underneath that Ask a Question box. Just click on the arrow button to show the document, and that supplement is available for download. Once the webinar ends, you will receive a post-presentation evaluation. It will automatically appear on your screen, and then when you complete that, you will receive an email with a certificate to download for today's event, which does come along with 1.5 continuing education credits. Quickly advance the slides here. Okay, well, I'll leave this one here. If you have any technical difficulties today, please reach out to us so that we can help facilitate your engagement in today's presentation. So now I'll turn it over to introducing Dr. Crano. Dr. Crano is the Oskamp Professor of Social Psychology at Claremont Graduate University in California. His applied research is designed to motivate youth and adults to abstain from illicit drug use, using media-based messages to both instruct, motivate, and also to reinforce youth in resisting the lure of illicit drugs. His use and refinement of fundamental principles of persuasion have proved successful in substance prevention efforts, helping adolescents and young adults refrain from avoidable and dangerous substance use behavior. His ideas have been adopted now by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, for whom he helped develop the UN's international standards on drug use prevention, and later worked for the U.S. State Department, for whom he has trained scores of individuals engaged in prevention efforts in their home countries. Both of these activities continue today, and he's very active in them. His basic research on persuasive prevention has been supported for many years by the NIH's National Institute for Drug Abuse. We are very lucky and grateful to have him with us here today. Dr. Crano?
Thank you, Patty. I'm very pleased to be here for return engagement, and I hope all of you will take home something that you didn't have before. I used to start my talks out with what Patty said. I've been funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse for a number of years. As a result, as you can see, we have solved the drug problem in America. That sometimes got too much laughter going, so I decided not to use that one anymore. And to thank you all for being here. I'm going to talk today about a thing called the EQUIP model. It's a very simple model, but it's one that helps to organize your thoughts when you're developing prevention messages that actually should work. Some of you saw my presentation last month. This will be semi-repetitive because I only know a couple of things, but it probably won't hurt you much to hear it again. And those of you who don't, it will be a little bit too brief for you, but you should have been there the first time. So, we're gonna give it a shot. Here's what I want to do today in the time we have. I want to do a brief discussion of what we've learned from earlier research on persuasion. And then hopefully some of you are thinking, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about prevention. I'll explain. Then I want to discuss the bits and pieces of the EQUIP model. I want to show you one bad message that's very popular, or that was very popular. I couldn't resist it. Most of my talks very often focus only on what's wrong rather than what's right. And the people at ADAPT said, well, wait a minute, if you're so smart, why don't you tell us what does work? So we're going to do that. I'm going to introduce a score sheet and then practice with some substance preventive messages. Discuss, and in so doing, discuss the strengths and weaknesses of those. I'm only going to have one bad message. The rest are good to varying degrees. Some are really good, some are kind of good. But let's start out with my principal theme of the work, which is prevention almost always requires persuasion. A lot of the ads that you see on both social media, almost anything you want to look at, when you look at those ads from the point of view of a persuader, you say, well, that ad isn't very persuasive. Why should I listen to it? And when you're dealing with drug prevention, very often what you're trying to do is get someone not to start something that they're thinking seriously about starting, or you're trying to get them to stop something that's much harder, stop something that they're already doing and seem to enjoy. I'm not talking about people who are substance use dependent, because that's a whole different issue, and it's much more difficult. So our attempt has been to cut you off at the pass, to stop you from starting, which is a lot easier than getting you to quit something. That involves almost always persuasion, which means I'm going to be telling you something if you were a kid on the verge of starting up a career in marijuana use, for example. I'm going to tell you something that you might not agree with. And what the whole idea about persuasion is that it always involves resistance. It always involves telling people something they don't want to hear. Almost always. In those rare cases where it's just simply informational, that's a different story, and not a very frequent occurrence. So how do you get people to agree with you when they come into the situation initially not wanting to? Here's some backgrounds, assumptions, and findings that I can tell you about. Success using the media has been really sporadic, and it's been due to a number of different problems. One of them is they don't really focus on how can I prevent somebody from doing something they might want to do. That's the central issue. And if you don't do that, if you don't focus on that question, you're going to miss it. And why is it then that we've had such a lack of success? I attribute these things to about three features. And I don't mean to be mean about this, it isn't. One feature is ignorance. That's not a sin. It means you just don't know enough. You don't understand the question the questions you're asking typically involve persuasion. And there's a real lack of knowledge about what we need to know. Theories, research, the literature. We've been spending, at really record rates studying persuasion since the 1950s. And that hasn't abated very much. Okay, and we haven't answered very many, or all of the questions at least, that need to be gone. I don't expect people in your field, I'm a professor, so I got to know this stuff. In many of you've got all sorts of things impinging on you. I don't expect you to become the world's foremost authority on the literature of persuasion. You leave that to people like me, or people better than I am. And hubris. If somebody sort of says, yeah, after this talk, hopefully you won't say, well, yeah, okay, so there's a lot of stuff I should know, but I'm so damn smart, I can finesse all of that and just come up with something that works. It's possible, and sometimes it happens if you're really lucky, but don't bet your house on it. Okay, it's a very rare occurrence. There are things you need to know that will materially affect your success or failure rate. And finally, there's a relatively consistent focus on punishment rather than reinforcement. Punishment meaning I'm going to scare the heck out of you, or I'm going to present you with an ad that's totally disgusting, that as a normal human being, you want to, maybe at most you watch that once, you never want to see the ad again. One-shot media ads do not work. Okay, I have to get you to watch my ad or my message and to see it more than once, or twice, or 3 times. Okay, so it has to be engaging. If it isn't, it's probably not going to work. I probably wasted my time. It is also the case that media-based prevention doesn't create gigantic effects. You don't need to. You do it. You get an effect of 2% of the populace that you're dealing with that go along with your message and are influenced by it. If you've got a national sample and you're dealing with all of a representative sample of every adolescent from 12 to 18 years old in this country, you get 2% of them to put off usage for a year or 2 or 10. You've done an enormous amount of good. Okay, so don't be scared off by, that effect size is only 3%. Yeah, right. I'll take it. Okay, so what are we doing? Let's think about the steps in persuasion that we need to think about. Somehow this didn't come across. How can I get this to advance? Is it doing that? Patty, I've used some...
Bill, you just push your either arrow button, your space bar, or the little next button next to the slide, then the animation will unfold.
Where is the next? Here. Okay. There you go. Okay, good. So here's the steps in persuasion that we've known about since 1953. You've got to induce the audience to attend to your message. If they don't watch your message, it's not going to be effective. Okay, that's common sense. You've got to somehow induce them to think about it. You've got to present information in a way that's difficult for them mentally to counter-argue. If I present you with a talk or with a statement that is telling you you're making a mistake, you should do something differently, and if you're committed to that action, you're not going to just lay down and say, yeah, okay, fine. No, you're going to, in your own mind, you're going to think, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or, well, I've got plenty of experience that says it does work, so forth and so on. Okay? There's a lot of different ways of messing this up. And one of the ways is you're not presenting information, or you're presenting information in a way that is easily beaten back, is easily resisted. So that leads us to the next step, which is you got to get buy-in, you got to get commitment to act, because you might get a person who say, yeah, that's right, but it's too hard to do, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, so you haven't really accomplished anything. As I said, a single presentation doesn't do much. You got to rinse and repeat. And finally, you got to, if you're really serious about dealing with media-based prevention, you got to create booster shots. In other words, after the big media campaign, after you've got your messages out and hitting people with them left and right, you might want to continue with a booster every now and then, just to bring that information that you put across back in mind. That has a huge effect. A lot of times people get discouraged because they do a media campaign and nothing happens. They go back 3 months later, 2 months later, and all of a sudden it's there. Why? Because it takes people to work through some of the stuff that you're doing. You're getting people to, in some cases, to change their attitudes about things that are fairly well developed, they're fairly well accepted in their minds. You can't change that with one shot. It doesn't. Nobody's that good. But you can change it with a lot of them, and then keep that change from dissipating with boosters. Here's advice from communication and persuasion. We've known this since 1943. I think Laswell said it. When you're evaluating a communication message, you got to know who says what to whom, how, and I added this last part, and with what effect, because now there's a huge emphasis on evaluation, which it should be. Did this work? Did the money we gave you actually pay off? The who has to do with the source of the message. That source has to be credible. We've known that, again, since 1951. What does that mean? It means that the person has to be expert and trustworthy. They've got to really know what they're talking about. You've got to, as an audience member, you got to accept that, and you got to trust them. They're not trying to get over on me. They got nothing in it for me. Now think about what we've done with the COVID rollout. A lot of people don't want to take the shot. So what have we done? What we've done is brought on, in the early days, we brought on Dr. Fauci, who was relatively well loved in the country, and he presented his stuff. But he's relatively well loved by people who are inclined to get the shot anyway. He wasn't particularly well loved by people who are disinclined to get the shot, which is what the damn campaign ought to have been about, right? So what we picked was the low-hanging fruit using this source effect, the who effect, but never the what. And we didn't concentrate too much on the what, the whom, the how, and the effect. Okay, what refers to the message? What are we doing? What are we saying? What is the text that is getting put across to people, either in written form or video or whatever? Okay, whom is the audience? The audience has to be chosen in part as a function of who the source is, or vice versa. Our audience for the COVID thing should have been, these are people who don't want to get the vaccine. Those are people you need to convince. For them, Fauci was not trustworthy. I don't trust that guy. He might have been an expert. You might have said, well, he's worked in the feds for a long time and he's got a great rep and all that stuff. Okay, I accept that, but I don't trust him. Well, you just blown credibility, which is all that you're going with in that source orientation where every ad is a great source. Now, some people, in other cases, you might have a well-known minister of a church come in and show you that he's getting his shot, okay? Now, for people in that church, it might be that man is or woman is quite trustworthy. I know this person wouldn't try to get anything over on me. I know this person isn't making money on me for this, the shot's free and all that stuff. But if I really am resistant, even if I'm a member of the congregation, I might say, yeah, but what the heck does he know about COVID? What does he know about the after effects of the shot and so forth, of this vaccination, of the vaccine? Maybe 2 years down the road, my ears are going to fall off. So what? He doesn't know that stuff. That's not his bailiwick. Okay, what is the message? That's what we're going to be talking about today. What do you do? How do you construct a message that has the best chance of persuading someone to do something? Whom is the audience? Again, it's exceptionally important to match the message with the audience. How refers to the medium, right? What are you using? If you're using TV to persuade adolescent kids not to start up a career of marijuana use, you're probably going to fail because a lot of your audience won't be watching TV. That's not where they are. So if you don't choose the right medium, your goose is cooked. And finally, the effect, did it work or did it not? That is becoming an exceptionally important piece of the whole puzzle, especially when you're getting funded by organizations that really do care about that, which is all of them. Okay, so our answer to the what is the equip model. And I went through this briefly last time, my last chat here. I'm going to do it again for those of you who were here and for those who weren't. What the equip does is it highlights key design features of a message that we have gathered based on review of 70 years of strong, well-established experimental and quasi-experimental evidence in persuasion. Okay, there's tons of stuff. There's tons of techniques that seem to work for the most part. And what we're trying to do is put them together in a simple formula that allows you to not go crazy when you're creating a message. What are we going to do? What are we going to say to this audience and so forth? So this is an introduction of the equip model. Let's see, where's my neck? Oh, here it is. I forget what I did. It's a model of message development. Equip is a simple mnemonic. It's sort of like equip. It's an acronym of words such as NATO or radar, something like that really has to do with a series of letters that make sense when you look at them in context. So, for example, the equip stands for things your persuasive message has to do if it's to succeed. And I argue it has to do it in this order. The first thing you absolutely have to do is engage. You have to get the people interested in what you're talking about. You have to question the belief to be changed, not beat it up, but just say, you sure people actually, a lot of people actually believe that? Because a lot of our attitudes are formed and bolstered by the assumption that everyone on earth believes this, even though you know it isn't true. The next step is that you undermine that belief. You have to say, well, actually, that belief is contrary to a whole lot of research that I can tell you about. It really is not. And how do you undermine that belief? By informing. Okay, new information, building on the alternative belief. You think marijuana doesn't hurt you? That's a question. Yeah, many kids will say, no, it's legal in my state for recreational purposes for people 21 and older. I'm 18, I'm grown up. So what the heck, I'll do that. You say, well, wait a minute, the National Academy of Sciences is our strongest scientific science arm in the whole country. The place that the Congress goes to ask for problems or questions to be asked and answered. They said that if you're not 25 years old and you're using a lot of marijuana frequently, brain development is going to be stopped wherever you happen to be. So if you're 18 years old, it's going to stop there. And you got about another 7 years of development. What that means is when you're 40 years old, you're going to be thinking of sort of like an 18-year-old. You want to do that? You think that's a smart thing to do? Okay, that's the inform part. And then persuade, which is give some reason for them to go along with you. Sometimes as persuade involves the tactics of persuasion, which I'll talk to you a little bit about today, but that's sort of a whole different thing in and of itself. So in summary, this is the equip template: engage, question, undermine, inform, and persuade. Engage, attract, and maintain attention. You see a lot of ads on TV selling a product would do just this. They engage like crazy. They're fun to watch. But then they got to raise questions. In our case, because we're doing prevention research, we got to raise a question about a pro-drug attitude, okay, or at least an ambivalent pro-drug attitude. It might be ambivalent, maybe pro, maybe con, but it's not negative. Then you got to undermine that or destabilize that belief. Then you have to inform. Use plausible information to replace the existing belief. Plausibility, how do we judge that? Well, it makes sense. It's logical. It's presented by somebody you trust and you think knows what they're talking about. I trust my mother, but I wouldn't buy a used car on her say so. She don't know beans about cars. Okay, so she's got great trustworthiness in my view, but zero expertise along that line. Now, if you're telling me about how to make a good pizza, that would be a different story. Okay, and then finally, persuade. You got to provide incentives for agreement with your message. We use different tactics, misdirection. So we have some situation where we talk about, let's see, what's a good misdirection thing? Well, we do an ad and we present it to the parents. Parents, there's something you ought to know about this drug. But we direct the ad. We know our audience is actually young people, maybe young adolescents. Well, we've directed the message to your mother. You're not going to counter it very much. You're not going to argue about it in your mind. You're going to say, well, it might be interesting to see what they're saying to my mom, but it has nothing to do with me necessarily. That's misdirection. And it turns out, since you don't resist it very hard as a kid, it gets in and has a much stronger effect on you than if that same ad were presented to you and it is introduced as kids, there's something, or students, there's something I'd like you to know about. Same ad, word for word, except for who you're apparently aiming it to. That misdirection works like a charm. Positive framing. Talk about what avoidance of a drug will get you. Better relations with your parents, your boyfriend or girlfriend is less likely to leave you. You're more likely to graduate from high school. You're more likely to get a job that pays well. You're less likely to be arrested sometime during your life. All of that stuff. Vested interests, we as another approach, another theory of mine, where essentially what we're talking about is how do we show that if you go along with my argument, it's going to work to your benefit. It's both important and it has hedonic relevance. That is, it'll affect your life in a positive way. Let's look at an ad now that's quite memorable. This is your brain on drugs ad that many of you, at least of my age and younger, up to a point, remember. I think Patty, you're going to play this for us, right?
That's correct. I'm playing it right now.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay, last time. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
Thank you. Let's see. How do I get my screen back now? Here's a problem with that ad with respect to the equip model. Let's evaluate it. Okay, let's evaluate this ad in light of what I've just said. First, did it attract people's attention? Yeah, it does. I mean, that ad people look at even today when it pops up on YouTube or something like that, and they say, "Oh yeah, well that's cool," and so forth. There are 1,000 meme counter ads to that, where people are talking about, "I'm brain on drugs. Oh, can I get a side of bacon with that? Can I do this?" Okay, all kinds of stuff. You want to try and avoid ads that do that for people. Don't be too easy to satirize. So far so good on the equip. Did it raise a question in your minds, viewers' minds? As it turned out, it didn't. All right, we tested the effectiveness of this ad, and it was non-existent. Did it undermine? Did it threaten an existing belief and provide an alternative? I say no. You can vote on this, I think, if you want. What's next? Under my QUI, did it inform? Did it tell you how to avoid frying your brain? What to do? No. This is sort of like the Just Say No campaign that was that gave birth to Dare, which also was a failed campaign. Just say no it's the right attitude. Yeah, just say no. But the question is, didn't it ever tell you how to say no? What happens to your best friend at a party says, "Hey, try this. You're really going to love it." And you say, "Well, I don't want to do it." And he's mortally offended and so forth. What? How often are you going to do that? Or your boyfriend or girlfriend says, "Oh, don't be a chicken. Let's do this." It didn't tell you what to do or how to do it. So it was not informative. And did it persuade? No. It's telling me to avoid a drug, not telling me how to do it or why I should. It will fail. And it did fail. That campaign went nowhere. However, if you're the right age, you still remember that this is your brain on drugs ads, right? There were two of them that really stood out in my mind. The same, one of them was a young girl, was actually the same person, young actress, who in the second ad, she said, "This is your brain, it's your brain on heroin." And she takes a big frying pan and breaks the egg on the outside, on the bottom of it, and drips down her arm. She uses the pan to beat up her whole kitchen, just wrecks everything in the kitchen. Okay, it's impressive. Did it engage me? Yeah, it sure did. Did it tell me not to, did it persuade me if I was inclined to use heroin not to do so? No, not at all. What does it mean? It means there's a huge difference between memorability and persuasiveness. Don't create an ad that that people remember. You do that in marketing if you're introducing a new product. You look at this new product, you're going to want to do all sorts of things to make people remember that product. So when you pass it in a supermarket, you say, "Oh, yeah, somehow that familiarity doesn't breed contempt. It breeds comfort." You see something, "Hey, I've seen that before. I think I'm going to try it." Okay. That doesn't work with us. It doesn't work in prevention very well. So that's probably one of the many reasons why that ad failed, whether this is your brain on drugs failed. Here's some important working assumptions that we've got to contend with when we're dealing with these kinds of issues. First of all, people don't always believe what they're told. Well, they shouldn't. I don't. And what that means is they're going to resist what you say if what you say is contrary to what they want to do. So you need to overcome resistance to attain positive preventive effects. Otherwise, you're going to fail. You've got to beat back the opposition. So our first and major consideration when we create persuasive ads, or ads we hope will be persuasive, is expect counterarguments, expect resistance, because that's what you're going to get, almost inevitably. And we maintain that the equip can help, if you structure your message correctly, as we've outlined, the equip can help overcome these kinds of resistant reactions. That's our hope. And it's more than a hope. Now, the last part of the equip was persuade. And what do we mean by that? We mean there's tons of research in the literature talking about, gee, we did this and it had a positive impact. Okay? Those things are kind of sitting out there on a limb somewhere. They're not connected. What we're trying to do is do that. So here's some of the things that we think will play into the persuasiveness of your message at that P part, at the persuade part. You've done all the other stuff right. You've engaged, you've questioned, you've undermined, you've informed. Now, how do you get them to buy it? First of all, you understand people don't always believe what you tell them. So why did that do that? Oh, I see why. Okay. So building on this, the first thing we do is make resistance difficult, impossible, or apparently unnecessary. That misdirection bit that I talked to you about just a minute ago really says, well, you don't need to resist this. We're talking to your mother. Why bother? Right? And you don't. Your level of resistance is much lower under that circumstance. You're much more susceptible to the message. Make resistance difficult. How can I do that? People have done it in thousands of different ways. You see it on ads sometimes. When you see an ad that it's hard to figure out what the hell they're selling, what they're trying to do is make you not resist it right off the bat. That, in fact, what's happening is you're absorbing the excitement or whatever it's doing that's capturing your attention. And underneath, sometimes on a crawler on a TV, they'll crawl across something like Ford trucks built to last. And that gets through because you're not fighting it. Maybe make resistance impossible because the message is so strong that wow, they got all the evidence, they got all the expertise, they got everyone in the country saying, do this. And I don't want to, but I guess I'm going to because I can't really come up with a reason why not to. Okay. Second is you tailor or target the persuasive message to the susceptibility of the audience. What do they care about? What are they susceptible to? And you take advantage of that information. This is called tailoring or targeting. Targeting means you take a group of people, all of whom more or less believe this, and you create the message to undermine this, whatever this is. In our cases, in our laboratory studies, sometimes we know precisely how a person feels about a specific issue, okay? And we create that message. We twist the message in such a way that it attacks that specific person who holds that specific belief. It's never that tight, but it's pretty tight and it works like crazy. So you need to think about that. How are you going to tailor your message to your audience? How you do that in mass communication? You don't. How can you do it using social media? Easy. Okay, so take advantage of what you've got available, especially if you're using adolescents or young adults. And when dealing with young adults, use message sources that they care about. All right. So if I'm going to try to get young adolescents to take their COVID shot, I don't think I'm going to use an old guy like Fauci, as much as I like him, as much as he influences me, because I think he's really, really smart and dedicated. And he knows more about that literature than I ever will. But if I were a kid and didn't know beans about who Fauci is or his work on the AIDS epidemic a long time ago and what he's doing now, I could take the easy way out. I said, who is this guy? And then why is he telling me this stuff? And I don't care what some stranger has to say. You would introduce him positively, but I always got the out to say he didn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't live my life, right? Which you hear a lot. Always a bad argument. So what I want to do next is have you look at this video that comes out of Australia. And I want you to watch the video. And while you're watching it, I want you also to think about, how does this work with respect to the equip? Does it engage me? Does it question a belief? Does it undermine that belief? Does it inform? Does it persuade? Okay, so Patty, if you could put that up, I'd be very grateful to you.
I will play that now, and viewers, immediately after the video, we will also launch a pop-up that will allow you to rate this video using the equip, and then we'll discuss it.
Yeah, and please contribute to this. It's helpful for me to see just how good my judgment is relative to yours.
Alcohol.
Alcohol causes cancer. Once absorbed into the bloodstream, it travels through the body. With every drink, the risk of cell mutations in the breast, liver, mouth, throat, and bowel increases. These cell mutations are also known as cancer. Stay at low risk of alcohol-caused cancer and other diseases. Reduce your drinking to reduce your risk. Alcohol. Think again.
Now we'll now send the survey out to the audience.
Great.
So we'll just give folks about a few seconds to go ahead and get that rated.
Okay. Will you pop that up for us?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Or when you're ready.
Okay, the results are in. If you toggle over to the surveys tab next to slides, you should be able to see those then.
Survey's new, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see what you say here. Okay, did it engage? A or B? Okay, strongly agree or agree. Okay, so you found this engaging for the most part. Some people in the middle, very few at the two bottom ends. Okay, so far so good. What's next?
Yeah, if you scroll down, you'll see what's next for the next item.
Oh, I see how this works. Very cool. Okay, this is what I don't know what this is for. Is this question?
Yes, this is question.
Question again, it's scoring pretty high on the strongly agree and agree. So you like this ad so far. U is undermine. Not bad. We've got some people in the D category, and about 30% in the kind of neutral. But still, you've got 48 plus 17. I don't know what that is. 9, let's say 49 plus 17. 3, 4, 5. More than 60% in the agree or strongly agree category, which is not bad. This is undermine. Yeah, undermine is good. Inform. Again, 50, 80, 89% in the strongly agree or agree category. When I read that or saw this ad the first time, I thought, wow, I didn't know that. And then finally persuade. Not quite as good. I agree with you. It's spread out. The information was good. It was things we didn't know, or I didn't know, and you probably didn't. Many of you apparently didn't either because you found it informative. But the persuasive part is not as strong as it could be because it's clearly this ad was meant to persuade you, right? And even sitting as a bystander, looking at the ad, you say, well, it's not very subtle about what the point of this is. But it was a anti-cancer ad run in Australia by their cancer institute, so probably pretty clear what they're going to be doing. But it could be improved. Okay, so here's one that you could improve with other kinds of tactics that we've talked about. They used a bit of distraction because the engaging part was you see all these moving red lines. It turns out to be those are sort of like veins or blood lines. moving up until they get into the body, and then things start exploding and all that stuff. So it's engaging. It keeps you there. And the info that comes across, it wasn't blurted, ruined, but it wasn't as persuasive as we would like it to be. Okay, so you and I are in pretty good agreement about what's going on. There are apparently a lot of questions coming into the Q&A. I don't know if we hit them now or later. What do you think, Patty or Laura?
Bill,
Yes.
I think that we probably can go through these pretty quickly because many of them are comments. So
Okay.
with your permission, I'll just read through some of the comments, and then there are some questions. One
Okay.
lady
Only
is One lady is commenting that the ad itself seemed to be more targeted to adult women.
Yep.
A similar question asking about population was, are these non-drinkers? Were they trying to target non-drinkers? Do you know anything about the target population?
It was a general mass media ad that means everybody, men, women, young and old, drinkers, non-drinkers. I mean, I think it might work both ways with drinkers or non-drinkers. I don't know if the gender difference makes a difference. That's testable, I guess.
We had another comment that they did not see that an alternative was given in the ad.
Well, yes, that's correct. I mean, their alternative is don't do it. Or, well, it was an alternative. They said sort of. They said I don't know, their NIH or whatever said no more than 2 drinks a day, which seems kind of a lot to me, but maybe it isn't. That maybe conflicts with our stuff because our NIH calculates not just how much you drink on any one occasion to define binge drinking, but also how many standard drinks you have over the course of a week. And I don't think it's 14, which means if you have 2 beers a day, you've gone beyond what our would advise. But I'm not sure about that number. I'm going to have to look it up because I don't do too much on alcohol prevention.
Okay, and then the final comment, which ends with the question, is all of my education has told me that scare tactics, using blood and guts, for example, as in the alcohol and cancer ad, cause many to move from their executive function to fight, flight, or freeze. How does this, in your opinion, fit into the EQUIP model?
That's a very good question, and it's quite useful. I have a real problem with scare tactics, partly because they usually don't work, or largely because they don't work. And they don't work because they're unpleasant to see, unpleasant to watch, which means a couple of things. One of them is they don't engage you so much. You don't want to watch that stuff. This was more engaging, I think, and maybe because I don't drink much, that it wasn't scary to me. I think if a person drank a lot, this might be not such a wonderful ad. But certainly for prevention purposes, which means we're starting with people who don't really need it, and we're trying to keep them from needing it. In that case, it's not bad. But I agree with you, and I agree with your teachers that emotion arousing ads very often fail, and they fail because a lot of reasons. One, people don't believe what you're promising. They find that it's too hard to watch. If you're really in the throes of drinking a lot, you don't want to see this ad more than once. It's going to be a problem. But, by then, if you're really dependent on alcohol, I don't, as a prevention guy, I don't have much I can tell you because it's a little, the horse is out of the barn by then. I can prevent you, but it's hard for me to get you to come back. And as I told you at the beginning, that's really the hard part of what we do. So your teachers were right. I don't think that the EQUIP is particularly wonderful for getting a person to stop something that they're strongly dependent upon. Okay.
Bill, one more question came in that I think is really relevant and was asked, the concept was asked in the last webinar that you gave as well. The lady is saying that the final woman figure in the ad turns her off with the breast exposure. And if you recall, we had some similar comments on the more sexual ad that you had presented in the last webinar with the scantily clad lady. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of that, frankly. I didn't see it as particularly salacious because they were really talking about cancer invading all parts of your body and you don't want it to happen. Could they have used a man instead? Sure, why not? But apparently they were more, this ad was pitched at women, obviously. And apparently they were more interested in getting women to think about this, to worry about it, than men. I mean, Australia is, in my experience of being there, which is, fairly limited, but not totally, is that those people drink a lot. And, I mean, daily and lots daily. And so it's that's a gross generalization, but at least the people that I run around with down there do. So yeah, it may offend you, and it may offend some of your audience, large parts of your audience. It may attract other parts of it. I don't know. Certainly, the old adage, sex sells. I don't think that works in this case because you're talking about someone really getting hammered with some horrible disease. So would I do that? Would I use that ad? No, I wouldn't. I mean, in terms of would I use that illustration? No. Would I use a man there? More likely, because they're the ones having somewhat more trouble in Australia with drinking. So I all I can say is I kind of agree with you. It's not necessary. I wouldn't say it's totally off the mark in the sense that it didn't strike me as a particularly sexy ad. But if you feel that way, then it's obviously not going to work for you. Okay. All right. So you're welcome. I hope that made sense. Let's see, what do we have here? Okay, did we get a poll on this one or not? Oh, yes, we did, of course. Did it engage? Yeah, you said that it did. A large part did. Yeah, raised questions. Yeah, it undermined, informed, and a little bit less on persuasive. Would it be memorable? You want to see it again? That's important. Memorable, I don't know, but would you, if it came on, if you're innocently watching TV and this ad came on, would you immediately get up and go to the refrigerator to get a beer or a Coke or something like that? Or would you watch it again? And if so, how often would you watch it till you got sick of it? Because one-shot ads don't work. So as an advertiser, I'm going to want to keep that in front of you for at least a couple of weeks, right? By which time you will have, you said, okay, fine. That's that. I've seen it enough. But then if you're an advertiser, you go into your next ad and you build upon it. See what you would do, I hope, with this ad, with the Australian video, is you would, I can't remember if it tagged it, if it branded it, but the next one that you did in that series, because you need campaigns if you're going to do mass media interventions, that next one would have the same brand as the first one. So it would bring to mind that previous work. If you enjoyed it, if you were persuaded by it, it would bring it back. If you didn't like it, you probably would turn it off. Okay, that's the risk of branding, but it can make a big difference for you. Okay, sorry about that. I had that turned off. Okay, so we did this already. All of these things gave it a fairly good score. Geez. Okay, I'm going to have to go to the next slide somehow. Let's try this. Okay, do you see this new ad here? Patty, is it up?
We'll go ahead and push this ad out right now. And similarly, then we will then launch the survey where you all can rate the equip.
Yeah. So let me know what you think of this. This was an ad done a few years, well, probably 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. It was very popular. Maybe 10 years ago.
Hey, Lindsay. I wish you didn't smoke weed. You're not the same when you smoke. And I miss my friend. I'll be outside.
All right, folks, we are now going to be pushing out the survey to you. This is a timed survey, so once it pops up into your screen, you will have 30 seconds to complete it before it closes, at which point we'll send out the survey results to everybody so you can all see how the group has responded. All right, the survey has now closed. So I will be pushing out those results to everybody. You should see the results coming up on your screen now. And you can just scroll up and down to see the various questions of the equip item ratings. So you can see how the collective group has rated these. Bill, over to you.
Thank you. Let's see those numbers. They're not here. Oh, why not?
Bill, for you, you actually have to toggle over to the surveys menu, but I'm happy to go through them quickly if that would be helpful.
Okay, I will. So engage, what's this? I don't see any numbers. Okay, it's fairly engaging. Not to everyone, but to most. Did it raise a question? Yeah, not bad. I don't like to see these things in the bottom half that disagree, strongly disagree, but for the most part, you got 46 and 25. That's pretty good, almost 2/3, or yeah, quite a bit. My addition chip is off. Undermine, not so much, right? So you're saying this, at best, this could be improved. Inform, sort of. I mean, think about what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out, how can I get kids to talk to their friends who are, which is the aim of that talk. And that was of that ad. That was sponsored by the ONDCP, Office of National Drug Control Policy. That's the office out of the president. That's the group out of the president's office, funded by president's basically free money to do it. They work in the White House. This was during Clinton's time, I think, when this ad was done. And was it persuasive? Well, yeah, I mean, it looked pretty good. It's 40, 60, 70, I don't know, 40, 60, 70. Man, a lot of people found it persuasive. That's pretty cool. I mean, part of it was you were distracted. You see a talking dog. It's like, oh, wow, look at that. It can't be just cute. They're putting across a message, which is, when you get high, you're not the same person. Okay. So this is a pretty good ad. It could be improved. We could pump more info out. All right. So we don't have, say, 20% of the people saying, oh, it's deficient in terms of telling me how to do it or what to do. It was reasonable and undermining. With a, that was a 30-second ad. Remember, that's hard to do. And the engage part is easy, and that's quite good. Engage is the easiest part of the equip. You can almost do anything to get people to watch you, if it's any good. How did I score this thing? I don't know if I told you how I scored it. Let's see. Next. No, I didn't. I didn't give it away. Okay. Well, you know my feeling. I think it could have been more informative. I think it could have been a little more strong in terms of questioning, threaten existing beliefs, and provide an alternative. The alternative is just don't do it, which is not a particularly good alternative to a kid who's thinking seriously about it. What you run into in these situations is you have youth, which is where this was aimed. This was aimed at kids who were vulnerable, but non-users. That was the target audience. Okay, that came out of the National Youth Anti-Drug Media Campaign, begun in Clinton's time, carried on through Bush's time, and even to a certain extent today. The idea was we're going to keep youngsters from starting, and the longer we can keep them from starting, the more quickly, the better off we are, and the more likely they'll just stay off the drug. In this case, marijuana. That was their primary aim. And so you need to push something at that age group. 12 to 18 is where they were really focused. All right. And I see a lot of 12-year-olds love that ad. 18-year-olds find it a little, it's kind of cool, but it's not going to drive anybody crazy. So there's the issue. Okay. They picked out the audience, which I didn't tell you about. I should have. Now that you see it in light of that age group, maybe it makes more sense to you. Maybe you find it, that might be a little bit better. I didn't think it was as persuasive as you guys did, but then again, I'm kind of jaded, I guess. So, what are you going to do? Okay, so we're back on slides. Let's go to the next one. Now we're going to do a lightning round. I'm not sure how we're handling this, Patty. We've only got a half an hour. I wanted to do about 5 minutes per slide, and we can do it, but you got to be fast. Okay, here's an ad. Look at this ad. This is a poster. You would run into this I don't know, let's say you're in school somewhere, you're in high school, and somebody puts this poster up on the blackboard, and you look at it. Here's a 42-year-old, here's a woman who's lighting a smoke off a cake that says 42, and she's clearly more than 42 years old, right? What do you think about that? Now, remember, posters are a special kind of thing. They can't do a whole lot. You can have text there, but there's not a whole lot to do here. Here, what this poster is trying to do is to get you to look at this and say, "Oh my gosh." I don't know if we should ask for ratings of this or not, Patty, because there are some parts of the equipment that this isn't going to do for. But what it's trying to do is engage you. Does it? Yeah, and it does. Does it make you think? Let's not do the ratings right now, because I want to say something that I think is interesting. Well, hope is interesting.
Well, actually, Bill, I had submitted the a little bit earlier. I sent it out. And so I believe the ratings are more or less in at this time. So let me go ahead and
all right.
end that survey. I'll send those results out to everyone. And for the lightning round, if it's easier, I'm happy to synthesize the results. But it looked like for the engage, it was pretty highly rated, over 75% for agree, strongly agree. For the question, we had about 42% at agree, 30-something% at neutral. So kind of more a little bit in the middle. Undermine was similarly rated, about 40, most ratings as either agree or neutral, and a few disagrees.
Okay.
Inform did not get rated very highly. Most people rated as either neutral or disagree.
Yeah.
And then for persuade, really kind of mostly were around the neutral, and then maybe a little bit towards the agree and disagree.
Okay. Right. Let's talk about what posters are supposed to do. This was targeted at, in my mind, and I don't know if this is true, but here's how I would have done it if I used this. Not all messages have to be in a video format, and the video's kind of expensive sometimes, so you got to produce it and all that stuff. This is a brochure ad or an ad and a poster possibly useful in a high school. Why a high school? Because at that age, kids, both boys and girls, are kind of interested in looking good. They don't give a damn about catching cancer 30 years from now. They care about, is this going to give me pimples? Right? Will this do that? Well, it certainly makes this lady look older than her 42 years. All right? So in other words, you can use a lot of different media to put something across. That doesn't have to be video. The medium of diffusion, how you diffuse your message, isn't fixed. It could be anything. This picture is in response to the how, which who says how, who says what to whom how. This is how it's being done. This is a medium. My attempt to show you a different medium that seems to work. And it reminds me to remind you to pick your spots. That is, you wouldn't want to put this poster up at an AARP convention because people would be offended by it. In a high school, you might get kids who love their grandmas. Okay, no problem. But they may look at this and say, "Oh, well, yeah, that stuff does mess up your skin, does make you look older." So if you get that message across rather quickly, and here you do it, then you're in pretty good shape. Here's the next one I want you to look at. This was produced by one of my favorite anti-smoking groups, the Truth Campaign. It was run out of Florida. This is the text on this. I couldn't put it all on one slide, but this is what it says. Heck, we love everybody. Our philosophy is an anti-smoker or pro-smoker. It's not even about smoking. It's about the tobacco industry manipulating their products, research, and advertising to secure replacements for the 1,200 customers they lose every day in America, because they die. Okay, that whole campaign was aimed at young people, kids who haven't started smoking yet or have and think they're cool. What this is saying, it's not cool. You're being manipulated, right? The tobacco companies are manipulating you. You want to be a rebel? Don't go around with a cigarette hanging out of your mouth like James Dean, because you're just a tool if you do. Okay, that's the attack that they were using. I like this ad. I like the irony of it, because they die part. Teens love that stuff. I think I must have arrested in my teen years or something. But when I read that thing, I broke out. I said, "Oh man, that's really a good punchline." And so I'm a fan of this. I'm telling you now, I shouldn't, I guess, try and change over things, but I like this ad, and so I want you to. Are we scoring this too, Patty?
We can. Would you like me to send out the survey?
No, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my time. I want to get to the end because I have three more of these things to do. Okay. This was designed. I already said this to deter adolescent tobacco use. To say, look, you're being used. You think you're a rebel? Then don't smoke, because if you do, you're just a pawn in some rich guy's game. Here's a billboard that one of our audience sent in last week sometime, I think, it's a billboard. Okay, now think about the limitations of a billboard. You're driving on one of our freeways in LA. You're driving, you see a big billboard there. Using weed comes with risks. Get the facts. samhsa.gov/marijuana. Okay, can you absorb that much when you're going, let's say, standard speed on the freeway, say 80 miles an hour? Yeah, you can if you're familiar with the road and you take your eyes off the road for a while. But the limitations of this are, well, you can't produce a hell of a lot of stuff that you need the people to read because they don't have time to do it. So it is a limited way of getting the message across. But if you can get the message there, look, this comes with risks, get the facts, that's quick. And if you can also absorb, where do I get that information? Where do I get the facts? And you see samhsa.gov/marijuana. Then that billboard has been extremely effective. Is it effective? That's what I want to know. What do you think? We going to survey that one?
Sending it out now.
Okay, great. What do we got?
Still waiting for them to come in.
Bill, some people are answering from their phones and it takes a little bit longer.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Sorry. I'm saying get it going, but you are. We're going fast here, but it's harder to counter argue if the message is coming at you pretty fast, which I'm counting on. No, I'm not doing that.
I'm not seeing too many more trickle in, but they will continue to update as folks continue to vote.
Okay.
So Bill, if you go to the surveys tab, do you want me to summarize?
Yes, right. Thank you.
Sure. So it looks like the audience is a little bit split. a bit of a bimodal distribution on Engage with folks. And we also send this out to the audience. You should be able to see this on your screen now. Whenever you're ready for that box to come off, you can just X it out and it'll close, and then you can see the slides. So what we're seeing here for Engage is kind of split around 30.5% to 30% on agree and disagree, with some neutral in between.
Yeah. Remember what a poster or what a billboard can do, though. What you're left with engaging is either a really freaky picture that people sometimes won't have time to process if it's really a weird picture, because part of that is, whoa, you got to look at it, you're surprised by it. And part of it is, well, do the colors attract you other than the picture itself? And I think in that sense, it was not bad. Remember, you've got a built-in limitations with billboards. This may be the best billboard you can get in terms of drawing people in to find out more about something. The message, the persuasive message, gets a sense essentially when you go to them and actually hit that URL. Right. So actually, in terms of engagement, it's not bad. And in fact, you've got, let's see, from neutral on, you got 20, 55, 60, 60%, 65% who are neutral or better, which is not bad for billboards. Okay. I agree with you. Those of you who are looking at this and say, well, I disagree, this isn't very engaging. Yeah, well, you don't have things jumping around and so forth. True. That would be more engaging, but it'd be a lot more expensive. Question, yeah, pretty good. Undermine, neutral, more or less. Because it's not presenting information, so I'm surprised that it showed almost anything. But again, as long as you can get that URL out there so it's people are engaged in it, they look at what is on the billboard and decide to go with it. Let's say, write down that URL. You're in pretty good shape. And then persuade, well, what are you going to do? The billboards typically don't persuade. They're not meant to do that. So I'm surprised it got even this good. I'm not upset about it, but I'm a bit surprised. Okay. Okay, this is what I said before. Remember the limits of this medium. Okay. You can't deliver too much information, but you encourage people to seek it out. By doing that, what do I mean by that? I mean, you better throw a URL on that slide, on that billboard, or else you waste your money. All right. Then when they do that, that's when the persuasive message is sent out. Here's another one I want you to look at. Why there? Yeah, I'm there. Jumping off buildings when you're pregnant harms your baby. And then there's some real small print here, which I can't read anymore. Yeah, damn. Let me see if I can do it this way. Yeah, you wouldn't ignore this warning. Why ignore them on cigarette packs? So this is also another Aussie ad. They're really heavy-duty research on if we put something really disgusting on cigarette packs, does it make people quit smoking? The short answer to that is no. People acclimate to those things pretty fast, to those ads fairly quickly. So they're not nearly as effective as we had hoped that they would be. And part of it is if you're a smoker and you're really addicted to that substance, to nicotine, you don't want to be reminded that this stuff, will wreck your pregnancy or do this or do that. I mean, all of these are probabilistic statements, you realize. So nothing's for sure. So where would you use this? I'm not asking, I don't know, Patty is, I'm not asking for numbers here. Again, you've got a billboard. You understand now, I think, the limitations of billboards. Let me see, go back to slide back. I didn't want to do that. So the poster might be useful near a pediatric hospital. So because going there, you get young fathers and young mothers saying, jumping off a building. No way. But then you read this, you say, oh, okay, you wouldn't ignore this warning. Why are you smoking? So it kind of perks your interest. You say, what the hell, what's going on with this thing? And then you go, and then you see the message. So again, they pick their spots. You put it on the side of a big the baby hospital or where babies are delivered. You get people looking at it. It's like, oh man. And then as you see there in small print, there's a quit line where you you dial this number and you've got some people telling you what you need to know or trying to answer your question. Let me look at the final slide now, where this was put out by, I don't even know who. And see, this is a weakness, one of the initial weaknesses of this slide. They didn't tell you who's saying this, who's it attributable to. Skin care by heroin. First, you think you can control heroin, but before long, you start looking ill, losing weight, and feeling like death. Then one day you'll wake up knowing that instead of you controlling heroin, it now controls you. So if a friend offers you heroin, you know what to say. This was heroin, and then finally the tagline, sort of, heroin screws you up. This is an attempt to use the language that people of this young lady's age probably would use. And you're looking at it and say, well, you're a kid and you're thinking, actually might be considering this. You're saying, she don't look so good. Her complexion's messed up. She looks unhappy, the whole thing. And again, if you're going to do this kind of a threatening ad, make sure the threat is immediate. Don't say 10 years from now, 15 years from now, she's got a much higher chance of being dead or catching cancer or doing this. Rather, 2 weeks from now, her complexion's going to stink. It's going to be terrible. Do you want to do that? Do you want that to happen to you? You want to lose your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, okay? So they picked their spots. I can't tell you if they did it right because I don't know where this thing came out. And I don't know who's responsible for it. You've got no attribution at all. So I can't help you with it. But I'm using it as an example of, this is a semi-threatening ad. It could have been done in a much better way where the person looks lively and healthy and so forth and says, she could have started, she never did. You shouldn't either. Simple as that. Three sentences. Heroin is a bad trip, something like that. So all of a sudden you've got a message that's positively framed, but that means it tells you what you gain by not doing this versus what you lose by doing it. That is called a negatively framed ad. If you do this, you're going to look ill, losing weight, feeling like death. Negatively framed ads, in my research program, tend to be not as successful as positively framed. And the reason for that is very often, as one of our questioners noted, very often negatively framed ads are framed as threats, which sort of this one is. And if you're on the verge of something, a lot of these kids are ambivalent about drugs. As they get older, from 12 to 18, they get more and more, and they're non-users, they get more and more and more ambivalent, right? The drift is toward ambivalence and toward usage. So a lot of our ads push to increase ambivalence because in the old time social psych prevention literature, what we find is if I make you ambivalent about something, you're easier to persuade. That's not true in the case of kids, but if you're already ambivalent, highly ambivalent about using drugs, and you're going to get more ambivalent as time goes by. Making you more ambivalent just adds fuel to the fire, just makes that drift faster, so you move into the drug faster. So in some research that we did pretty recently, what we tried to do is lower ambivalence, lower it, and persuade you not to do it, because how we lowered the ambivalence was attack the pro-drug features of the ad, or of the beliefs about whatever the drug was. In this case, I can't remember. I think it was marijuana. I'm not sure. And when we succeeded at that, what we had is, instead of having about an equal number of pro and cons about starting the drug, we knocked out a lot of the pros. So the cons took over. The attitude became less ambivalent. The attitude became more negative, and kids didn't use it. So that was a nice, successful ad. Patty, are we taking and like, what did I do?
We do have a number of questions and comments that are coming in. Laura, did you want to walk through some of those before we transition over to the last few sort of pointers and key tips for the slide?
Sure, I will, Patty. It looks like Bill is going to reconnect.
We are? Somehow I got Laura. Oh, I see. I went to the slide.
Hi, Bill. We're just going to go through some of the comments and questions before some of your final slides. Is that okay?
That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. For the last
Can I do just one final bit? It's really quick.
Of course.
You got a minute? Okay. And then I'll get to the things. Here we go. Here's some advice on using Equip's persuade component. Don't overpromise, don't overthreaten. You just lose your audience. It's stupid. Fear arousal ads usually fail. So unless you really, really know how to do it, don't do it. You'll be disappointed. Unbelievable ads. That is, ads that promise if you do this, these horrible things will happen. A lot of kids, this is part of a lot of anti-meth campaigning. Meth is a horrible drug, and you can get addicted after one exposure to it. That's really rotten. On the other hand, most people don't. And a lot of kids are sitting in class with their buddy who they knew was doing some meth last week. He looks perfectly okay. If you say, if you do this, you're going to die from it, or it's going to cause you to become a hopeless addict, it won't work, right? You will find that people find that unbelievable, as are exaggerated ad. Maybe this one is an example of an exaggerated ad more than anything else. Whimsical ads usually fail. You get a dancing bear with a little girl doing a ring around the rosy, and every time they go around the circle, they step on a joint. I mean, come on. And you're trying to persuade 18-year-olds to avoid cannabis because of this? Good luck. Won't work. Disgusting ads usually fail. Why? Because we don't want to look at them. So that means as soon as I engage you once and you get disgusted at me, the next time that ad comes on, I'm not going to watch it. Why? I don't like being disgusted. Nobody does. And here's the problem. Current ads result in future failures because they reinforce resistance. If I resist a very strong, what I think is a very strong ads coming out of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, that gives me more certainty that my attitude is right. So the next one that comes down the pike is much less likely to succeed. So you see what we're working against, because we have a whole history in this country of campaigns that failed. And now you put it on me to overcome that, plus getting my message across. It's not so good. For young adults, involve opinion leaders as message sources, but choose carefully. Try to create a norm of abstinence. And you would be surprised. A lot of parents don't engage their kids about drugs because they're afraid the kid knows more than they do. You don't have to engage very strong. You don't have to know everything. All you got to know is if you're taking a substance that changes the way you feel, the way you see, the way you move, where's that substance working on? What's it doing? It's working on your brain. Are you willing? And I'm a father, I would say this to my kids. I've said it to my kids. Are you willing to take that risk to put this stuff into your brain that causes some rather large changes? And you don't know what the hell's going to happen. Now, later, whatever. That's what I tell parents who come to me after every talk I give and say, well, I agree with you, but I'm afraid my kid knows more than I do, and I don't want to look stupid. And my answer is you won't look stupid. You don't have to know the name of every new drug that comes out every week. Hell, in LA, you get a new drug a week because good chemists, high school chemists, are basically trying to avoid what has just been made illegal. So they change a bond in the formula and produce something. Hey, it works, gets you high. Yeah, it gets you high. It might also do something really bad to you, and we don't know about that because we never tested it. We have no history of it. It's a brand new drug on the street. So, okay, if I were to go ahead now, what I would say is if there are questions, you've got some, here's contact information for you if you'd like, and I will try and answer any questions that Laura, you might come up with or our audience has come up with, and I'll try and answer them. We have 10 minutes before I have officially run out of time, but I'll stay here as long as you want.
Phil, on behalf of me and Patty, we are so super proud of you. Thank you for making it through your slides. You were committed and you did it, and we covered it all. And we actually have a slew of questions and comments.
Thank you.
Yes, no, congratulations. It was a wonderful presentation. And I wanted to just go through a couple of comments that actually are questions as well and get your input on some of these. I won't be able to get to all of them, so I apologize for those that I won't be able to share with you, but we will send those to Bill so that he gets a copy of the comments we can address. The first one is, I'm going to start from the bottom up with the most immediate information that's present in our mind. So the first comment really centers around people seem to just want the facts spelled out for them, and they don't want to have to go and find them with the ads. Can you comment on that at all?
Yeah, I think, I believe that's true. But the problem is if the facts are contrary to what your opinions are, chances are you're going to say, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. So there has to be more than just facts. There has to be something underneath it. Why I'm basically putting pressure on you to believe my facts. And that's hard to do. Just presenting facts isn't going to do it for you, because it's too easy to say, to do all kinds of ways of getting around it. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or that person can't be an expert, or that information doesn't jibe with my experience, or it's illogical, or what are you talking about? So facts are absolutely important as part of the information component of the equip, but it's not sufficient. Okay, it's necessary.
A few comments on the SAMHSA ad, the billboard that was up there with the website. Yes. We actually had three different comments. So one person was commenting that, when you're driving by, it's really hard to digest all of the information that's on a billboard, right? Which is what you were suggesting. But that includes even digesting the URL.
Yes.
And so that's
a limitation of the medium itself. It's not necessarily a limitation or a critique of that billboard. It's saying, well, like in LA traffic, I may have a half hour to look at that billboard because I'm stuck in a traffic jam, which happens all the time. So in some cases, it's not a problem. But when you're buzzing by it, you're right. You don't have too much time to do it. I think I told you and Patty when I drive into the Utah for skiing and things of that, they have big billboards, anti-drug billboards, prevention billboards on the side of the road. But usually the traffic there is pretty fast. And some of them I want to pick up and use for my examples, and I can't. It's I'm going too fast, and there's just not everything. I had my wife writing down the stuff as fast as she can, and she can't keep up with it either. So, you got to understand the limitations of your medium. In this case, and that's why I showed that ad. It's a good ad, but it is limited by what that medium allows you to do. You can't throw in 4 lines of information or persuasive information. Nobody can read it that fast. At least I can't. And I'm pretty fast.
Bill,
yes.
Along those same lines, then, do you have any data that actually looks at how many people visit the URL as a result, possibly, of the billboard campaign?
Yeah. That is something that in this case, what was it? I forgot the sponsoring agency.
SAMHSA.
They got to check that. I mean, if that's part of the evaluation part of the who says what to whom, how, and with what effect. That's with what effect. If you get no hits on that URL, you might as well burn the billboard, because it's not enough to persuade you, and it just doesn't do the work that you're trying to do. If you get a lot of hits, in this case, to me, that would be the indication of success. You got 200 people today in the first day of the ad, they're writing in and saying, tell me more about this, or asking for more information, send me this. Great. Okay, fine. So it worked. You don't know what the number of people who passed by didn't do it, but you got a reasonable number of people who asked for something. That's how I would evaluate that ad, that billboard.
Thank you, Bill. Actually, this is a really interesting question, and something that we have come across in HIDA communities as well. What about harm reduction and the elements of harm reduction? We haven't seen many in these examples, but what about ads that are trying to encourage safer use of drugs? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can. If you work on a government contract or a government grant, which we do in my shop a lot, you can't say the word harm reduction. You got to say don't do it. In Europe, that's not true. Okay, as you saw in Australia, either they're saying no more than two drinks a day. That's harm reduction. We probably couldn't do that on government funding. Okay, ours would be don't drink anything, which is in some ways unrealistic. I mean, having a beer at night after watching a baseball game or something like that. Nobody's saying that's going to, other than getting you fat, it's not going to get you sick probably. So Yeah, I mean, we don't know much about, in my shop, we don't know much about harm reduction because we've been funded by National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, for 20 years. And we couldn't do that, even if we thought, well, this will work better if we did it this way, because we sound very absolutist. You go into a high school and you say, don't do this. Or the thrust of the ad is never do this. And in some drugs, that's reasonable. I think in terms of meth, it's reasonable. In terms of oxy, it's probably reasonable. You don't want to take those chances, but never have a beer or never smoke a joint. I mean, I can't say it publicly, but it's like, well, I don't think that's going to be terrible for you. It's not good for you, but it's not going to kill you. It's not going to really get you into deep trouble, I don't think, unless you keep doing it. So I can't answer your question because we have no research whatsoever on it. We weren't allowed to do any of it.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Bill. We've had another very concrete question come in around if you had to choose between offering a QR code or a URL or website on an ad, which one would you choose and why?
I'd probably use the URL because it's more convenient for more people. A lot of people don't have a QRL reader on their phones, so you can't do it. It's much more convenient. I like using that myself. But my guess is that you've got a lot of people who, kids, of course, are good at this, but old people like me are much less likely to be able to say, what the heck is that? And how do I access it? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misreading the thing. I've got no data out of this other than myself as the subject. So I can't answer it based on any kind of real research. I'm sure some ad people have done it, have got that data available.
But am I hearing from you that it really is accessibility? So if there was a high likelihood that the target population did have phones with cameras that could register and read the QR code, that might be something you would recommend over URL?
I would, yeah. My real recommendation was probably why not both, but if you don't have the space, I would go with the QRL code, with the code.
Okay.
I'm sorry, rather than the URL code. Okay.
Thank you. Bill, I know we've got only 2 minutes left, and there's one question that I'm going to just reshape a little bit. It regards cultural influence, right, on, as you mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, in Europe, an ad would be perceived probably differently than it might be perceived here based on some of those cultural influences.
Sure.
Can you speak at all to how to include, like within the equip model, how do you think through incorporating some of those cultural contributions to persuasion?
Well, this has to do with sort of extra equip where I've said a number of times, you've got to match the message with the audience's proclivities. So I'll give you an example. The FDA recently banned menthol cigarettes, and I don't know when that's going to come into play. Menthol cigarettes were seen as in the African American community as much more popular than they were in the majority white community. Okay, so in one way you'd say, well, that's no fair. That's doing this problem to these people, but in fact, it is that approach, I think, is aimed to try and cut back on lung cancer and so forth, which is appreciably higher in that community than in the other. So the equip doesn't handle that. It's not made to, but it's in a sense part of our persuasion culture. You match the ad to the audience, and you match the medium to the audience too. If you don't do those, then nothing's going to work. If you don't engage your group, maybe because they don't care about the stuff that you're talking about, it's not going to do anything. It's just a waste of time. We've wasted so much money and time and opportunity running campaigns that totally miss the mark in terms of who the real target is, or who the people that we're targeting are. That it's a sin. I mean, you just can't do it because there's precious enough little money to begin with to run prevention campaigns. They're very expensive sometimes, especially if you're using TV, and you can't blow it. It's a real opportunity wasted if you do.
Bill, two quick comments, and then I'm going to hand it over to Patty to wrap up just on things that you have said previously. One of the viewers is suggesting that a URL for computer use and QR codes for print make a lot of sense and is a good guide for deciding when to use which one. Another viewer is commenting on that she is actually involved in a government contract right now where she has been tasked to actually implement harm reduction practices through various marketing and media campaigns, including educating on tainted fatal products. So it's real, it's out there, and so it does exist. It's being funded in some way, shape, or form, and I just wanted to mention that.
Well,
Bill,
we've learned something over the years, maybe, I hope. Yeah, no,
yes.
it's great. I'm glad. Seriously, I'm really glad to hear that. I really am.
Bill, you have been absolutely phenomenal. And from the bottom of our hearts here at ADAPT, we definitely want to thank you for coming back for a round 2 on Equip. I'm going to hand it over to Patty to maybe tell you a little bit about some of the upcoming webinars that we have on the docket. But special thank you to you, Bill. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lori. You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you everyone else for attending today's webinar. So we do have 2 upcoming events in the technical webinar series. One is scheduled for June 15th at 2:30 p.m. on the value of prevention, demystifying the cost-benefit analysis. Then coming up on June 23rd at 2:30 p.m., we have a webinar on appraising evidence to help supporting you in understanding emerging, promising, and best prevention practices. Those announcements will be coming out. You can also view them on our website as well, and you can register directly from the website. So once this webinar ends today, you'll see a screen, a post-webinar evaluation that will just automatically pop up onto your screen. We do appreciate you taking just a couple of minutes to provide your evaluation feedback. And then once that is completed, you will receive an email with a link to download a certificate of completion for today's event. We'll also be in touch in the next 24 to 48 hours with a link to view today's webinar and any other follow-up resources that you may need. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Crano, for joining us today. Wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for coming.